Hello, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. And the views of the guests may not represent those of the host of the station. Folks, you're going to want to listen to this podcast. Yes, I get excited about every guest I have on because every guest brings something different to Chatting with Betsy, and I learn something from every single guest that comes on my show. So I definitely do get educated and entertained and enlightened by every guest that comes on Chatting with Betsy. Today, I want to listen to my guest, who is an author. Her name is Becky Bohan. Becky Bohan. She is Minnesota-born. And she wrote the book, get my notes here, sorry about that, A Light on Altered Land. Becky earned her master's in English literature from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Becky is a retired vice president of a training consulting company. Her novel, A Light on Altered Land, was a finalist for a 2020 Goldie from the Golden Crown Literary Society. Becky's latest novel, I hope I'm going to pronounce this right, the Santorini Setup, which came out in February, is a suspense romance blend. Becky and her wife, author Nancy Manahan, live in Fort Myers, Florida, where they enjoy warm winters, fresh seafood, and exploring the Everglades. Well, that makes me want to go down to Florida and visit you all, Becky. Welcome to Chatting with Betsy.
Well, thank you, Betsy. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you on. I would like to comment. I always comment, as I told you earlier, about the book covers. And I love your book cover because the title of your book is A Light on Altered Land. And you show, this is what my perspective is, light, like a beautiful light. You have these branches, and I see a bird flying, which to me represents freedom. And, freedom's going into a light. Like the people in your book who read it will be enlightened. Maybe it'll set them free in a way. The people in your book are looking for freedom and how they want to live their life. And I'm going to ask you what I ask every author is, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, a few years ago, 2015, I believe it was, the movie Carol with Cate Blanchett and Luna Mari came out. I saw that movie, and I loved it. It just really resonated with me, and I was moved to read the book it was based on, written by Patricia Highsmith. It's about two women in the early 50s who fall in love, and at that time, a lesbian relationship was not legal, and so they get into some trouble, and they have to come to terms with themselves and with the love they have for each other. Well, I wanted to know what happened to these characters after the book ended, after the movie ended, and Patricia Highsmith, of course, has been dead for several years. So I just sat down and I wrote a sequel to that book. And it was set 16 years later, called Carol Recovered. I could not get permission to publish it from the Patricia Highsmith estate and copyright holder. So it was one of those things that just has to go up on the shelf or up into the cloud and sit. However, it really helped me craft my writing. I've published a couple other novels, but this one was really, I wanted to write it in the flavor of Patricia Highsmith. So I could not publish that book. Well, a couple of years later, Nancy and I took a road trip to California from Minnesota to meet family and friends, and while there we heard about something called Rick Simpson Oil, and it's a cannabis product. It's not legal, because it's very high in THC. It's full spectrum. And Nancy has some health challenges, and so we thought maybe some of that would help her. So we set off for Minnesota, and in our trunk was this little stash of, let me just say, some product that was not legal in all of the states that we passed through. Well, when we hit a stretch of Wyoming, I was just sitting in the car in the passenger seat mulling what we were doing and mulling this book that I wasn't able to publish, and suddenly I thought, my gosh, Nancy and I are kind of like Carol and Therese in Patricia Highsmith's book. We're traveling across the West on a road trip, and they were illegal because of their love and their relationship, whereas, Nancy and I, of course, were married, but we had something that made us outlaws. So all of a sudden, these two characters came to my mind, Ellie Belmont and Catherine Kepler, and I just went with it. It seemed as though I could write a book about two women in their 60s, as I was, and they fall in love, and they have to face the challenges of that come with love and a new relationship.
That is very cool to have characters in their 60s. I'm in my 60s myself. I'm 64. And when I was younger, your perspective changes as you age. But when you're younger, you're thinking, oh, in your 60s, if you lose your partner or your spouse, you're too old to love again. And that's not true. And people might think that, but it's not true. You can love at any age.
That's exactly true. Romantic love has no age limit on it. And I have seen people in their 80s fall in love and get into very loving relationships. So it's wide open, and this is something that I really haven't seen much in literature, and especially in lesbian literature, of two women in their verging on their elder years falling in love. So I really wanted to represent them, and also all of the wisdom and insight that they bring after having lived decades on this earth.
Yes, there is much wisdom in people in their 50s, 60s, and up. And I feel that younger people really need to ask their, the older people, I consider myself older, I have to wrap it around my head, I'm a senior citizen now, that, to get wisdom from us. We lived life, so we have much wisdom and lessons to teach. And in your book, one of the women, I forgot which one, was straight. She was divorcee. And one,
that's right.
And one is his wife died. And exactly. I know, from losing a spouse myself, how that is. So to have a straight person meet a lesbian and then they fall in love, that is a totally different type of story. I mean, in midlife, I call it midlife, this woman is, I know whether she's experimenting or was she always maybe gay and didn't realize it?
No, she was not experimenting. This was genuine. It's true. Catherine Kepler, who is a retired psychotherapist, has been heterosexual her whole life, and her husband dumps her for a younger woman. So she is left on her own in her later years. She is surprised by her attraction to Ellie Belmont, but these things happen. I should say Ellie is a retired college teacher. She taught English at a community college, and her spouse, Mary, died 3 years previously from metastatic breast cancer. These two women met in a coffee shop and bonded over the topic of downsizing. As they got to talking, they discovered that they were each looking to downsize from their large homes. Ellie lived in Minneapolis in a big house, and she was looking to move into a senior community where she would have continuous care. Since she was on her own, she wanted to feel secure that as her needs increased over the years, she would have someone to take care of her. Catherine, on the other hand, has two grown children and actually grandchildren, and she is also looking to downsize, but she's looking at a condo. So anyway, these two women meet, they kind of compare notes, and out of that blossoms a friendship. And they wind up going on a road trip to California from Minnesota, and that's where they fall in love. And they come back to, or on their way back to Minnesota with a little stash of something in their trunk, they get into some trouble.
That's I can't help but laugh. I just picture two women in their 60s getting busted for some illegal substance. I can see the humor in that in a way. And then they have to deal with one of the daughters who is homophobic and accepting of the relationship.
That's right. And Catherine has learned over the years with her daughter, who is difficult, to choose her battles. And she will let her daughter, Jen, spout and not get triggered. She has learned that skill from her profession and just dealing with Jen over the years. And she knows that she has to live her own life. She can't live her life for her children. So there is a bit of a break there, but it does somewhat resolve itself. Jen is never satisfied, so I think she'll be as satisfied as she can get. No, I should go back a moment, Betsy. You mentioned the cover and the light and the tree and the owl. That's actually like a lighting on the tree, or you could see it as flying off. On the bottom border of the book are marijuana plants. So people who are familiar with the plants will look at that cover and say, "Ooh, what's that about?" I mean, on one hand, it looks kind of spiritual, a light and all of the filtering up above, and then on the bottom, this dark band of marijuana plants.
Oh, it's wondering what kind of plant that is. I'm going to give my personal perspective on marijuana. I am not by any means encouraging illegal drug use. I wished that medical marijuana, I live in New Jersey, medical marijuana is very expensive. I wish it wasn't so expensive, and it just became legal here, but there's still no stores where you can buy legal marijuana in New Jersey. They still haven't gotten to that yet. And I think it's at least almost 2 years already since they passed it, or a year and a half. And my husband had Alzheimer's, early onset Alzheimer's. I would have much rather have given Matt marijuana gummy bear, than those horrid psychotropic drugs that cause such terrible side effects. This is Betsy Wurzel giving her own opinion. I much would have rather that, but Matt could not do the medical marijuana because he didn't have the, ability to go sign the paper, and it is very costly. And this is funny, my coworker, her husband was taking medical marijuana. She showed me the prices. I said, "Oh, Crystal, it's not like in the 70s where you got a $5 bag." A big sandwich bag for $5. I only know that, but for my sister. Go ahead.
Every state is different. There's such a patchwork of laws, and they change every year, it seems. And it would be nice if we could just have a national policy, and that people who are in need of medical marijuana can get it, and get it inexpensively, because it really does help some people. I know our sister-in-law, Diane Manahan, when she was going through her metastatic breast cancer, she found that smoking weed helped her immensely, and she didn't have to take as many drugs and pain relief, and she was very happy to get that. And there again, her family had to have a little pipeline to the underground in the small Minnesota town that she was from. So, it just makes sense to have something available to people that is very helpful.
Yes, I definitely agree. I mean, everyone has the right to their own opinion, but you know what? When you have someone in your family or you yourself are suffering, and this substance can help you, it changes your perspective. It really does, because who wants to be in pain? I have even seen, I know this is off the subject, but I saw a documentary where they gave someone who has Parkinson's marijuana, and the difference was incredible. Now, why can't these people get access to it without getting into trouble? I really think it should be, in all 50 states legal. And, that's just my personal opinion. And then when it comes to children, Becky, so many, and I'm sure it's across, gay, straight, whatever, sexual orientation you are, that when you lose a spouse or someone gets divorced, some children don't like to see their parents with another person. It's so very common. And sometimes I wonder if it's are they worried about the partner getting money, or are they afraid of their parent getting taken advantage of, or are they just so self-centered they don't want their parents to be happy? And what's your take on that?
Well, I think it can be a combination of all those things. See, it's difficult to bring someone into a family, into an established family, or you're working out the various issues. And I think kids are protective of their parents, and also they, I think, are protective of the love that they want from their parents. And they're afraid that perhaps that their parents will now be focused elsewhere. Now, that's not true for all people. In the book, Catherine's daughter is unhappy. I think that part of her unhappiness is the sense that Catherine may be spending money or being taken advantage of by this new relationship, whereas Catherine's son and his wife are ecstatic that Catherine has found love, and they are totally supportive. So you see two sides of responses here.
Yes, I lost my husband 2 years ago, and I told my son Josh, this is before COVID, I was going to go to a dance, but then COVID happened. I couldn't go. That, he has a right to enjoy his life. I have a right to enjoy my life. If I were to meet someone, I have a right to do that. And that he should want me to be happy. But my son is like, no one's good enough for you, Mom. Very, very protective. And then he's worried that if I were to meet someone, then that person would ask my son to leave. And I said, Josh, that's not going to happen. It's really strange how kids think. When my husband was diagnosed, the first thing Joshua said was, oh, when Daddy dies, then what happens if you meet someone that doesn't like me? I said, Josh, we're a package deal, so I don't need, someone. And if they didn't like you, then I wouldn't, of course, date them. They would have to like you, or they couldn't be part of my life. I mean, that's just the way it is. So I think sometimes adult children, if they are living with their parents, they might feel threatened that someone else is coming in and, might kick them out, and they just, have to be reassured. I want to ask you, because I never heard of this, can you explain what the Goldie Award is? I never heard of the Golden Crown Literary Society.
The Golden Crown Literary Society is the premier organization for authors of women-loving women literature. It's, I think it's 15, 16 years old, and they're a group that has all sorts of programs to support writers. They can provide editors, beta readers, proofreaders. They put on an award ceremony every year and nominate the best books that come out of the lesbian world in all sorts of genres and subgenres. And it's a big honor to have been named a finalist for their fiction award.
Well, congratulations on that, and that's probably why I never heard of it. So that's why I had to ask. That is something to be congratulated about. So I have to say I'm Jewish. Mazel tov on that. That's really very cool. And what would you like the reader to take away from your book, Becky?
Well, I have a few themes that run through it, and one of the main ones is that what seems like a setback can open new opportunities. These two characters run into issues and problems along the way, and they trust the process, they trust the path that they're on. And in fact, I think that it's something that is illustrated in my very writing of the book. I could not get my sequel to Carol published. That door was slammed. And instead of it being a setback, it really was an opportunity to hone my writing on this sequel, and then come up with another, a totally different novel that in some ways is informed by Carol. And in fact, what I call Easter eggs are kind of scattered throughout. And people who are very familiar with the movie or the book, will find little references here and there. And another one, of course, is that romantic love has no age limit. You can fall in love when you're in your 60s or 70s or 80s. It is universal. The heart is there ready to respond to another person if that is the right person for you. Also, I wanted to show women who were older, and as we had mentioned earlier, bringing a sense of their wisdom to their relationship. And they model for us really honest and open communication. That's one of the things that I've gotten a lot of feedback on, is people saying how much they love how these two women interact with each other. They talk things out, and they are honest and authentic. And it's refreshing for people to read characters like that. And I did that deliberately because I read so many fiction books that have characters who are so dysfunctional, or they lie and just are dishonest with themselves and with others. And, you know, people don't have to be that way. Fictional characters don't have to be that way. You can still make characters interesting by making them good people and striving to be honest and open in their relationships. So that was a goal of mine in writing this book. Another thing too is that I wanted to show the kind of the art of aging and how people who are getting into their elder years need or can adapt to the change in loss. I mean, these two characters have had significant losses in their life, you know, with losing their partners, and seeing how they adjust. So that was another takeaway that I hope. I also wanted to illustrate in the book something about home vigils and death care. I talked early on about Ellie and how she took care of her partner Mary when Mary was dying. And what I write about in the book is a kind of a reference or a takeoff of a book that Nancy and I wrote. It's a nonfiction called Living Consciously, Dying Gracefully, A Journey with Cancer and Beyond. And it's about our sister-in-law, Diane Manahan, who had metastatic breast cancer. She planned for her end. She wanted people to take care of her at home. She wanted her after-death care to be at home, to have her beloved friends wash her body and prepare it for the crematorium, and and to have her body rest at home for an amount of time so people could come and visit her at home, and then she would be taken to be cremated. So that is what I talk about in the book when Ellie relates what happens to her wife, and Catherine is quite astounded at that and wonders if it's legal, and it is. In fact, Nancy and I, with two other women, started an organization in Minnesota called the Minnesota Threshold Network that lobbied to have it be legal to keep a body at home for up to 72 hours, as long as it's on ice or kept cool, and that way people can come and visit and spend time. We've had just wonderful stories of people visiting, going to a vigil and singing and telling stories and crying and laughing, and the bonding that happens around, and the sacred feeling that's there in the room with the body. And sometimes people can just feel the presence of the spirit that has left that body. And that is one of the things I really wanted to show in the book. So it's mentioned. I don't go into a lot of detail, but it's enough, I think, to get people wondering, oh, can that be done? And maybe they would be interested in exploring that further.
Wow, that is, that's the way it used to be, like years and years ago. People had funerals at home. So, Bob, you're talking to the choir here, Becky. I believe in, a big advocate on, having your ducks in a row, planning end of life, people who have listened to my show, they know, not because I'm morbid, but because we live, we die. That's a fact of life. We need to plan. We need to plan how we want our end of life to be, and make it legal. I like that you had that in your book, just to put that in there, and that you said that on my podcast, because people get tired probably of me saying it. They hear from someone else, maybe it'll click. Sometimes people hear from different people. It might take someone else's voice for it to click in, but so important to have your end of life. I mean, this society shies away from talking about dying and grieving, and we can't. We have to change society, and I'm doing my part. I talk openly about getting your end of life. I talk openly about my grief, and that you can still enjoy life after your loved one dies, but you will always love and miss them, always, and you can always honor them.
Exactly.
I have to ask you, Becky, about your two characters in the book. Do they do jail time? Do they get arrested?
No, they don't. They have a very interesting interaction with the state trooper. And this is another place where what seems like a setback opens new opportunities. And this trooper recognizes in Catherine someone who can help him. He needs help. And so he lets these two women off. But it also generates a bit of a crisis in their relationship, because there's been a car accident. Ellie was hesitant to stop. She also was tempted to lie about what was in the car when the officer found the little stash, and just saying, well, Catherine didn't know anything about it, but Catherine had told her, no, we're going to be honest. And so later they have to process what Ellie's temptation was. And Catherine can understand that. In fact, she is quite remarkable. She said, I've been able to live my life open and honestly my whole life. You, Ellie, as a lesbian, you have had to lie early on in your life about who you were to be safe. And so, it's understandable that sometimes you will feel that's the urge to fudge the truth. But they have committed to each other to always being open and honest, and they sustain that.
Well, it sounds like a very interesting book, a very inspiring book, and I want to tell the audience that it is available on Amazon.com, and it received rave reviews, 5 stars, and I highly recommend reading it. I think we all can learn from reading your book, Becky Bohan. A Light on Altered Land. Folks, go check it out. Go on Amazon.com and read about it and read the reviews, and hopefully you will buy the book. Is there anywhere else they could buy the book, Becky?
No, that's, actually they could go to any of their stores and ask for it, and they can order it through local stores. We do have a website, nanbec.com, nanbec.com, and there are links to Amazon at that website, and people can see our other books. Oh, and
okay.
Also, A Light on Altered Land is available on Audible.
Oh, okay. That is that's good to know. Ebook, paperback, and audio.
So 3 different formats.
Okay. Ebook and audio and paperback or hardback. Okay. Thank you, Becky. Oh, and thank you for coming on. Thank you for writing your book, your other books. And by you writing books that talk about real life issues, even though the 2 people are not real, but they could be based on real people that you knew or that you know, it helps other people. Because I have found in the 2 years of, well, almost 2.5, doing my show, people think they're all alone in the world, and they're not. Many people feel the same way. It's just that people are afraid to say how they feel because they're afraid of being judged. And people have a right to say how they feel in a respectful way and not be judged and harassed and bullied for it. And I think books like what you wrote help other people, especially in any community, straight community, the LGBTQ plus community, helps people to be comfortable with themselves.
You know, Betsy, that's interesting. I got an email from someone out in California who said that this book saved her marriage. She and her husband were drifting apart, and she read this book, and she said the communication that's modeled in this book was so powerful that she handed the book to her husband and said, "You read this." He did, and they were able to talk after that, and she said that it saved her marriage. Also,
wow.
I get so many emails and on the reviews of people saying, and these are lesbians who are saying, "This is my life. You know, I've never seen my life shown in a book like this. I'm retired and I'm in my 70s, I'm in my 60s, what have you, and so many of the life experiences that you mentioned come from my life too, and I've never seen them, and I'm so grateful that you're showing this." And so I feel very satisfied with the responses that I'm getting. You know, this book has at its core a lot of spirit and love, and I think that really readers pick up on that.
You know, you brought out a good point, Becky, that this book will touch anyone from any walk of life to inspire them, motivate them, make them feel they're not alone. And that must be really powerful for you to get these responses. Like that must be, I know sometimes I get, people send me comments when I used to do videos. It was like overwhelming, but overwhelming in a good way, that I touched somebody's life and helped somebody. That's a good feeling, isn't it?
It sure is. And, you know, people said, "Gosh, after I read your book, I feel hope." And I'm so glad that they can pick up on that from the book, because I do want the book to be hopeful.
It sounds very hopeful, and I hope people do pick that up and, you know, look into your other books as well, because you're a great writer, and I can tell that you really write from your heart, and I appreciate you coming on and writing your book and helping other people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on your show.
Oh, you're welcome. I started out just interviewing caregivers, but I interview anyone about any topic. No topic is taboo on my show. So if you want to come back with another book, you're more than welcome to come back.
Oh, thank you. I'm writing a sequel to A Light on Unaltered Land, so maybe in a couple of years I'll be back.
Yes, or, you know, have another book you'd like to discuss, just let me know. And I'd be delighted and honored to have you back on. Folks, I want to thank you all for listening. Please share this podcast to help other people, to let people know they are not alone. I want you all to know in this audience, you are not alone. Everyone, I think, has universal feelings that cross every gender. I don't care if you're gay, straight, what color you are, what ethnic background you are. We all feel the same about certain things. And you're not alone. And I want people to know that you're not alone. There's many people who feel the same way you do. They just won't talk about it. I have a big mouth. I will talk about it. I didn't used to, but I got getting brave in my older age. And I want to thank Jeannie White, who's station manager at Passionate World Talk Radio, for writing the show. Producing the show and writing the blog. Please read the blog. It will have information about Becky and where you can purchase the book. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible and believes in giving people opportunities and a platform to be heard. Thank you. This is so important for people to know they could come to Passionate World Talk Radio, be on my show or someone else's show, and be heard. And it doesn't matter who you are, what you are, you will be heard. You have that right. Everyone has a right to be heard and to be respected and to be treated with dignity. And that's how I feel. And I know that Lillian feels the same way, and so does Jeannie. So everyone is welcome to be a guest on my show, Chatting with Betsy, at Passionate World Talk Radio. If you want to be a guest on my show, you can email me. And you can reach me through Passionate World Talk Radio network.com, or my own email, which is Sloan, S-L-O-A-N, Betsy31 @gmail.com. Sloan is my married name. And in a world where you could be anything, folks, please be kind. It is free to subscribe to Chatting with Betsy, and I encourage everyone to subscribe so you don't miss my guests. I have very interesting guests on, if I have to say so myself. And I am on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon.com, iHeart, wherever you hear your favorite podcast. And just enjoy the show. And thank you for listening and for sharing. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy at Passionate World Talk Radio. Chat with you later. Bye-bye.